So with the new phase plan update, we got the addition of two new plugins, Snap Heap and Multipass, and they both accomplish more or less the same thing. They can do processing things which you can't really do in phase plant without using multiple lanes. And they're really good plugins, and Snap Heap is even free, I believe. So being the simpler of the two, I'll start with this one. Snap Heap, the gist of it is 4 serial processing lanes. That's one lane starting on the left, going into the second one, third one, then the fourth one on the right. And if you click on these icons in between the lanes, you can make parallels. And you can have any combination of parallel lanes. You can actually have them all 4 going in parallel. And what I've done here, this is just an example patch that I whipped up really fast, is I've high passed a reverb, and then I have the dry signal going out in the other lane. Now this I can't do in phase plant without using 2 lanes, so Snap Heap makes this really easy, and I like it a lot. And actually, Multipass can't really do this either, unless you're, yeah, actually, I don't think Multipass can really do it without using some kind of weird-ass workaround. That's the gist of it. At the top, you got your current patch information, so you're browsing presets by clicking on the folder. You can move through the presets by clicking on the arrows. You can save preset. You can reset to default. You can undo it if you change your mind, or redo it if you're really fickle like that. I don't know, you do you. Below the current information, we have the modulation section. So we have 8 macros, 2 LFOs, 2 envelope followers, a pitch follower, and a Midi control section. The macros are the simplest, so I'll start with them. Basically, in phase plant, you have in the modulator section orange symbols, and if you click on an orange symbol, you can route different controls to the macros, and then you can modulate things. And anything that has an orange symbol can be modulated. Actually, even things in the modulation section can be modulated, even if it's not in the same modulation, same tab, whatever. Then can you modulate? Yeah, you can modulate macros by each other. I don't know how that works, but it's there. I mean, that's the thing. You're pretty unlimited as to what you can do in these kilohertz plugins. They let you do a lot of stuff, not because the plugins on their own are really fancy. It's just that it lets you do pretty much whatever you want with what you're given. Now in the next section, we have the 2 LFOs, and they're both the same. How you use these envelope followers, pitch followers, and LFOs are all the same. In the visual feedback section, you got this orange symbol again, and you can modulate anything with an orange symbol. Now, I have these yellow symbols below them, and that can modulate the amount that it's being modulated. So right now, for example, this resonator is routed to the pitch follower. What I can do is I can take this LFO and I can click on the yellow symbol, and I can modulate the amount that the resonator is mapped to the pitch follower. That's just one example. There's basically any number of things you can do with this. That's just an example, and I don't know, maybe it's a shitty idea, who knows. It's up to you to experiment and find out what works for you. Left side of the LFO section, we have phase. That's where the waveform starts. Then you have the LFO speed. By default, it's in hertz, but you can sync it up to your project melody. I'm at 174 because I'm a drum and bass guy. I like drum and bass, you know. You can control the LFO depth in the top right section of the visual feedback window, and then you have your LFO shape. So sine, triangle, square, saw, standard, fair. Then you have your random sine. Then you have your random square. A bit more messy type of modulation if you want that. Then next to your visual feedback section, there's a retriggering section. By default, retrigger's off, which means the LFO will just keep going regardless of what notes you're playing. If your retrigger is on, it will restart the LFO every time you hit a note. So you can see the LFO restarting as I hit notes on this shitty patch. Then the sample and hold, basically you see the gray sine wave moving. Now if I hit a note, it'll basically it'll snap to whatever value the LFO is at that point in time, and it'll stay there until I hit another note. So I was at basically negative max amplitude when I hit the note, and the LFO is going to stay there until I hit another note, and it'll change value. Now below the retrigger section is the source, and if you have a sideband going in to snap heap, you can have that. I don't really know how I would use that, so I can't really help much there, but if you have a sideband going in and the sideband plays, then it'll activate the LFO, and that's only if you have retrigger or gate activated. Otherwise, it's not really going to do anything. So this gate it looks like it's really high up, but it's really not. It's at like minus 20 decibels. Maybe if you have some really detailed sound going into here, it might be a problem, but right now it's really not. What gate does is it sets the minimum value needed to trigger the LFO. In this case, retrigger. If I have the gate up really high, it peaks at 0 dB. Then it would have to be clipping basically to make the LFO do anything. But if the gate is all the way down, it doesn't have any effect at all. Unless your sound is basically inaudible, in which case, I mean, what are you doing? Second LFO is the same as the first one, envelope followers. So if I hit a note, the envelope follower will track the volume of the incoming signal, and you can use this envelope follower to get some really strange modulations going. Now on the left side, I have an attack, decay, sustain, release setting, and you'll notice the decay and sustain settings are grayed out. That's because I'm not using the ADSR mode. When I turn the mode to ADSR, I'll get them. But attack and release set the time it takes to take effect and the time it takes to stop taking effect. Man, I'm really shitty at explaining these really simple things for some reason. Sorry. I mean, it's really basic. But peak is the faster mode of RMS. RMS is like a slower response. Exponential, it's a bit more of a tense curve. And then in the bottom left, obviously, you got your orange symbol, so you can set things. You can even change the depth, which is something, I guess, maybe you want to do that. Legato, it will start the ADS curve from 0 when it's off, and when it's on, it starts from the current level it's at. So if it's at like minus 15 dB and you hit a new note, it's going to keep going. It won't reset. Source is here again, and so is a gate, which is only on when ADSR is on. Second envelope is the same as the first. Then you have your pitch response. Pitch follower. I'm so sorry. So what this does is it'll try and track the note that's being played on the incoming signal, and these two lines are the range. So it won't track anything that's above or below these two lines, and it tells you what note the range ends at. The root by default is at A4, which means it's basically normal pitch tracking. If you move the root left or right, it'll offset the pitch tracking, so you'll get negative or positive modulation, and the sensitivity just more closely follows the pitch of the signal. Source and gate are here again, and then Midi controls. These are mostly used with MIDI keyboards, but man, I'm so slow today. Holy fuck. You can use a bit of these features in your piano roll, and you can use the pitch and the mod wheel like macros. If you have your MIDI keyboard plugged in, you can link the pitch and the mod wheels to your MIDI controller, and you can slide the pitch and the mod wheels back and forth, and you can get some modulations that way. So orange symbol, links knobs to your macros as usual. Note tracking will track what note you're playing on the MIDI keyboard. Velocity will track how loud you're playing on the MIDI keyboard, and pressure is it's a less common feature. It's about aftertouch. So if your keyboard doesn't have aftertouch, you can't use it. But basically, you can link knobs to the aftertouch value of your MIDI keyboard at any point. So that's the MIDI section, and below we have the lanes. So I already went over the lanes on a superficial level, but we have a few more controls here. So we can disable the effects going into a lane with this blue light here, and then we can mute the sound going into a lane, or we can solo the sound going into a lane. So we have like a parallel lane, we'll only hear the sound going into the lane we've soloed. Same controls for all 4 lanes. Below the lane section, we have the lane mixing control section. So we have the volume going out of the lane, the panning going out of the lane, and the amount the effects are applied. And I believe that's it for Snap Heap. Alright, as always, have fun, go fucking wild, I don't give a shit.